¿Qué onda amigos? ¿Cómo están? Bienvenidos a este nuevo episodio de su podcast ¿Qué te tomas? Yo soy Beto Rizzo, su podcast host. Esta semana me senté a platicar con Nelson Grande. Nelson is the president and the co-founder of Avenida Entertainment Group. Nelson actually started his career as an actor. Y aunque su carrera como actor llevaba buen momentum, Nelson realized that people in Hollywood, they tend to cast Latinos for the stereotypical roles, right? So because he didn't like what was happening in Hollywood, he actually decided to move away from being an actor. He still acts, right? But now he's more in the production side. He decided to move into Avenida and create Avenida Entertainment Group para así ayudar a abrir las puertas de Hollywood a proyectos latinos que tuvieran meaningful roles for us. And through Avenida Entertainment Group, he helps raise funds to produce and establish Latino TV and films in projects across the U.S. Con Nelson hablé acerca de su vida como hijo de inmigrantes, about the moment that we are having as Latinos in the U.S., about the importance of representation in the TV and film industry, and about the disadvantage Latinos face to raise funds for their projects. He actually told me that out of all the venture capital that goes around in the US, only 1% goes to Latino projects. I mean, that is unbelievable, given that Latinos in the US are about 19% of the population. So if we only get 1% of all the venture capital, how are we supposed to catch up? That's where him and Avenida Entertainment Group come in, to be able to support and expand and grow that 1% to the actual amount that we should be getting as Latinos. Ahí les encargo que se suscriban al podcast. Go and subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. Go like and please go leave a review for us. Compártanlo con sus amigos y raza. Nos escuchamos el siguiente episodio. Nelson Grande, how you doing, brother? Welcome to ¿Qué te tomas?
Excellent, Beto. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here.
No, thank you, man. Thank you. We were just talking about what he was drinking, and hey, my guy's a baller here. You know, I'm like, hey, dude, what do you want to drink? He's like, hey, you know what? It's either vodka straight from the bottle or on the rocks. I'm like, okay. So, cheers to you, man.
Salud.
Salud, carnal. I'm doing tequila because I regret to say that I didn't have vodka. I have this. So I bartended for a long time, Nelson. And when I stopped bartending, I was still really into cocktail making, and I participated in some competitions. And I used to have like this. We lived in a small apartment in Midtown here in Sacramento. I had like a bunch of bottles, but I didn't have any room for them. So I used to put them in a plastic container. So I still have the plastic container filled with like all kinds of different alcohol. But vodka is not one of them, dude, because I had, some rough experiences with it.
Everyone has that one. Everyone has that one. You know, for me, it was tequila. For a long time, I couldn't drink tequila, but I started getting it back into it. You know, there are a lot of good tequilas out there now. And you know what? I started getting more into mezcal. Mezcal is becoming just a big favorite of mine. So. But yeah, vodka has always been, it's great. Yeah, vodka is just a good go-to for me. I have such a high tolerance with these. I could throw back a few and be pretty fine.
Good. Yeah. No, man, it's exciting to talk to you, man. I've followed your socials for a few years now, and I've listened to some of your interviews, for about your life and your upbringing and the work that you do. And I've always thought, especially like lately, I've seen your socials, and you're talking a lot about how do we bring more Latinos into media, which is what you do, right? So like specifically film and documentaries and producing their own content and putting it out there, specifically because we are at a time donde Latinos, we're in. Like I did this research in this episode back, like a few years ago on being Latino. Latinos estamos de moda, like we really are like the thing happening, right? So
no nomás estamos de moda. It's also the numbers, man. It's also good porque ya sabes que ya han hecho por mucho tiempo que, Latinos are in right now. Latinos are hot right now. Well, let me tell you, that's always true. We are always in and we're always hot. But it's more than a moment where, people always talk about, Latinos are having their moment. We're having our moment. And we've had these moments historically, like where we're kind of trending and something cool happens. A couple of Latino celebrities get some recognition. But now it's more a matter of stats, numbers. Like our population's growing. We're the majority. I think it's like 1 in every 4 young people in the U.S. is a Latino or a Latina. So it's more than a trend. It's the actuality and the facts. So for us to be so ignored in the industry, in the film industry for so long has been a shame. I mean, we're talented just like anyone else. Even if you're just putting people to people, we're people like anyone else. We're talented. We're Americans. A lot of us can argue that a lot of us were here first. Our ancestors were here a long
absolutely.
time.
Fíjate, it's interesting what you're saying, man, because I remember I was watching some show with my wife, and Ricky Martin came on. This is back in 1997, right before he sang for the World Cup, or maybe a year after, 1999. And I remember he sang at the Grammys. You know, he had like his whole show, and he was badass. I mean, he was incredible, right? And this is, I mean, 20 plus years ago, right? 25 years ago, we can say that. And I remember when Bad Bunny did his thing last year, we were all freaking out because we're like, oh my God, this is historic, a Latino. And then I thought it was historic. It is still historic, right? But at the same time, I was like, I saw that Ricky Martin thing after I saw Bad Bunny, and I was like, holy shit. We've been made to believe this many, many times, but like the change isn't really taking place.
Yeah, and that's been the thing, you know, next exactly. And I'm glad you brought that one, Alberto, because that was one of the moments when seeing Ricky Martin doing that, you know, 20, like you said, what was that, like 25 years ago, whatever, however long that was. That was one of the moments I remember too, like, oh, cool, this is someone like me. I can be there, but it just hasn't. So, you know, I started to act as an actor, you know, years ago. And both my wife and I both started as actors years ago, and that would be the road we have gone through if it would have been a level playing field. But you know, a lot of things aren't fair. Some things are more than unfair. Some just you know are discriminating, which is kind of what happens in the industry against us. I turned this from, you know, wanting to be in front of the camera to having to be the person who is behind the camera and actually making the change. And you have to be a little bit of an activist to actually take a stand for this stuff. And you have to sacrifice a lot of things. Like I've sacrificed trying to take my chances at being an actor and auditioning because I was very vocal about it. You piss some people off. You piss some industry people off, and they're like, oh, diversity, oh, the best person gets the job, and all that BS that comes with it. So knowing that I'm backed by my community, knowing that I'm backed by stats, and I'm backed by a lot of people who feel the same thing, it just kind of puts fuel into this. It's like, listen, you don't have to agree with creating opportunities for Latinos or Latinas. We're coming, and we have the buying power. It's happening. So we decide what gets made and what doesn't, and it's happening more and more.
On the buying power, I remember when I saw that statistics about we being, if the Latinos in the U.S. pulled together, we would be like the fifth economy in the world, right? And that it really hit me, man, because so I again, I like to follow the trends. I love statistics, and I was looking at that, and when you really think about it, a lot of times people don't understand the fact that Latinos in the U.S., we're Latinos, right? We're here, but we are kind of something different. We are a different market. We're not just Latinos like Latinos in Latin America, because they identify themselves as, you know, either the Honduras or the Mexicanos or you know, Venezolanos or whatever they're from. Right? But here we are the Latinos in the U.S. and we're the fifth economy in the world. It's time to claim what we're worth.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel about it. You know, the thing is when someone's used to getting the biggest slice of the pie, and then you have another group being like, hey, we want some of it too, and I have to like, no, what is it? Josh, I'm drawing a blank, but there's a saying that goes, equality feels like oppression to those that are privileged, or something like that.
Sí. I heard about that. Yeah,
it's probably some variation of that. You know, I think it's very similar to that, if it's not it. Pero como estabas diciendo ahorita, you know, I saw myself watching TV, and it was always all the white kids that were at summer camp, and all the white kids doing that. Y los latinos siempre eran los pobres, you know, con un zapato y descalzo, you know, all that stuff. And it kind of left me in that perspective. And I started feeling like, oh, this is my reality, you know, because I came from a family that, you know, my family immigrated here, and, you know, they were working class, you know, hardworking, all of that. And we weren't privileged financially. I'm going to say we were privileged with love. I had a lot of love and a lot of community and family around me. So it was excellent. Pero como estabas diciendo ahorita, que these roles, they actually have an impact, not just on the outside of the world, but internally. Porque yo no me sentía como que yo era igual como claro. Nosotros. Sí, como la otra gente. So I went around with this this minimized type of sense of self. And I'm a big guy, I was always a big kid. I was always the biggest kid. I was always white framed, I'm six.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'3". I'm 220 pounds. Wow, so I've always been big. I was this big in high school.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, but I say that because I'm referring to like what I felt internally of myself in contrast to the rest of the world. And then so not only does it affect ourselves to see how we feel about ourselves, but other people, this guy Trump, when he was in office and I think he was running, so he was talking about, Mexicans, they're rapists or criminals and they're this and they're that. People who don't know us see us on TV, and what they see on TV is their only representation of us. So if they don't know us in person and they only see us in the background, kind of doing the cleaning and the service work, and then on TV, they see us doing all the bad stuff. I mean, it takes an ignorant person to understand their Latinos are deeper than that. But nonetheless, that's a representation of who we are. So it matters. Representation really does matter, especially in an industry that we're paying a lot of money into.
No, and it goes back to the point that you were making earlier, where you were saying that, when you take a little back from someone who's had it all the time, it feels like oppression. And when you start seeing people in positions of power that doesn't necessarily look like the way they used to. And again, here in California and, New York and like all these big places that we receive a lot of people, we're used to it, right? But like when you talk about the people in the center, in the country, that they don't necessarily look at us. And then all of a sudden, they see Nelson Grande with a production company. They're like, what happened with all these Mexicans are taking over? It's like, I hear you 100%. Now, Nelson, you were talking about like your family. You come from a family of immigrants.
I do. Yeah. Mi mamá es mexicana y mi papá es de El Salvador. Entonces, yo digo que soy un Mexidorian.
Okay.
Un Mexidorian American.
Mexidorian.
No, sí, pero yo nací aquí en Los Ángeles. Nací en Los Ángeles. Mi primer idioma fue español, entonces yo puro español hasta que entré a la escuela, y ahí es pues cuando empecé a hablar inglés. Y intento hablar mucho español porque a veces siento que se me escapa un poco, pero como me casé con una venezolana, yes, I get a lot of practice, but now, venezolanos speak a little bit faster too.
Rápido, carnal.
Oh, sí.
Tengo unos amigos venezolanos. Recientemente empezamos a cotorrear. De hecho, los conocí por medio del podcast. Ellos son productores de contenido también. Te hacen video y llevan redes. Los López, un saludo a mis compas los López. Y sí, hablan rápido. Pero los venezolanos hablan como bien cariñosos, ¿sabes?
Sí.
And I like that, dude.
No, that's a good way of saying it. Ya sabes que aquí en Los Ángeles la mayoría somos mexicanos, pero como I'd say that, mexicanos and salvadoreños and Central America, there's always been that slight friction, but it's cool because I have faith in this younger generation. It seems that the Latinos are less conflicted, and Central Americans, and I think Salvadorians more specifically, I guess maybe just because I pay attention to it, I feel like are getting a little more traction as a community and really feeling the pride. And I've had conversations with other people from El Salvador, or their families come from El Salvador as well. And there's always been this still sense of like being like, always being put down or not as good as the other Latinos, which is unfortunate because the way other groups see us Latinos as a whole is just like less than anyway. So for us to have this BS type of like separation, separation is kind of silly, but I'm happy. I'm really seeing a lot more unity, and I think as also more generations are living here and spending more time here, the Latino just across the board are unifying a lot more.
I agree, and I'm with you, man. It's I just don't understand that dynamic of putting each other's down. It's stupid, dude. Hopefully,
can I give you my theory? Dude, I'm sorry to cut you off. Let me give you my theory on it. And it's with anything. It's with any type of racism, colorism, or anything. It comes down to people as people, we want to feel important. We want to feel
Mm-hmm.
important. You know, everybody likes to be told good job. Everybody likes to be told, hey, you're a winner, you're doing good, and this and that. You know, you meet a confident person. You meet a person who's very well. You don't have to be successful. Just a person who's confident and someone who's fulfilled. They don't have any hate toward anyone. But sometimes what it is that when people don't have anything to actually be proud of, like any achievements, it's an insecurity. It's like, well, what do I have? And let's just say me as an, I'll say myself, when I was younger, I was more insecure. And I had a little bit of that machismo in me, you know, in my earlier
Right.
20s. I had that about like, oh, no, I'm better. And I even had it because I'm like, oh, I'm tall, I'm taller, you know, and all that BS, it goes away because people hang on to things. It's like, oh, yo soy más blanquito, yo soy mejor, or oh, yo
Sí.
soy de esta parte de Latinoamérica, yo soy mejor. It all stems from, I feel like, insecurities. And again, and I think I want to lead this in un lugar más positivo, okay? I think that not just the younger generations, but I think our generation and our they kind of peel that BS aside and are more real and more connected. So I'm really happy to see it.
No, dude, I think you're 100% correct. Porque me puedo identificar de alguna manera con lo que dices.
Uh,
Siento que sí, esas cosas, como esos prejuicios, una vez que te sientes más seguro de ti mismo, sí se te van yendo. Sí siento que las personas que son más inseguras son las más culeras, hermano. O sea, disculpa
sí,
la palabra, pero es que es la realidad. Las personas
la
que
palabra
siento que no tienen nada
perfecta.
que aportar. De hecho, en algún lugar leí, siempre te vas a dar cuenta que en un grupo de amigos,
Hey,
the majority of people pick on one. Say if you have 6 people that are your friends, and like we mess with each other. We're friends. That's
yeah.
what we do, right? But
Yeah.
most people pick on one. But there is one that actually goes harder on this person, right? And that is
Hey,
because they are afraid that if they're not the first ones to pick on them, they're gonna be the next ones to be picked on. So
that's a that's a good observation.
it's
Yeah.
crazy, right? Like it's so raza, pónganse las pilas y cúrense de sus inseguridades. No sé qué sea el trauma que traigan, pero aquí venimos todos a hacernos el paro, como dice Nelson. Así que, carnal, también te quiero preguntar, ¿no? Tus papás llegan aquí y tus papás se vinieron muy jóvenes a Estados Unidos. ¿Cómo es que se vienen para acá? ¿O cuál es la razón?
Mira, mi papá se vino, ya sabes, por las guerras en El Salvador. Y ya sabes que están
Ujú.
cambiando mucho las cosas, pero él y mi abuelita y mi tía se vinieron. Ah, no me acuerdo en qué año, pero eran, ya sabes, por las guerras y cómo era la cosa en El Salvador. Y
Sí,
él tenía como unos, creo que él tenía como unos 16 años. Igual con mi mamá. Ella se vino de México y ellos se vinieron porque ya mis abuelitos fallecieron y después la familia se empezó a venir para acá y aquí se conocieron. Pero mi mamá trabajó mucho, ya sabes, como mucha gente que llega de México trabajando en las fábricas, cosiendo y después ella subió mucho y ella trabajó creo con Body Glove, no sé si te acuerdas de esa compañía Body Glove, no sé si todavía existe o
no me
no, pero
recuerdo.
yo vi a mi mamá muy trabajadora. Se despertaba muy temprano antes que subiera el sol. Me llevaba enseguida con la señora que me cuidaba y, y llegaba tarde en la noche ya, porque mis papás se separaron
Sí.
y llegaba tarde. Y mi papá, cuando él llegó, él le interesó mucho el negocio. Entonces, para él, negocio, ventas, negocios, eh, cómo comunicarse con la gente. Entonces, yo creo que eso fue la mejor combinación para mí, porque cuando yo me estaba creando, yo tenía esos dos ejemplos. Mi mamá, que era muy
Sí.
trabajadora, que le echaba ganas. Mi papá, que él le gustaba usar su mente y sus social skills. Y pues creo que agarré la combinación perfecta para hacer lo que estoy haciendo.
La
Entonces,
verdad, y
sí,
fíjate que social skills, ¿no? A veces pensamos que solamente trabajo, cabrón. Algo que recientemente tuve la oportunidad de ir a mi alma mater, a mi community college. Me invitaron a hacer
yeah,
to be the keynote speaker to talk about it was the first generation college student day.
uh,
So, I went, I talked about different issues. And I think the biggest thing, the takeaway from what I talked about is that specifically, right? So, like, siempre estamos, como latinos, siempre estamos concentrados en trabajar duro, agacha la cabeza y
sí,
trabaja,
sí,
pero se nos olvida la parte social, cabrón. O sea,
sí,
que es la parte clave para desarrollar cualquier cosa. No solamente, sabes, saber que no lo tienes que hacer solo, pero desarrollar, hacer amigos, crecer tu network y el negocio, así es como crece. No sé en tu experiencia o sea, cómo vayas. ¿Crees que eso te ayudó a despegar? No sé, ¿qué opinas tú de esa parte?
La cosa es que los latinos tenemos la reputación de ser muy trabajadores y creo que es algo
Ujú.
increíble. I mean, it's awesome. Y ya sabes
Right.
que oí un chiste el otro día que dijeron, uh, dice knock knock, que de los
Who's
knock
there?
knock jokes.
Mhm.
Uh, five Mexicans building a house.
Five Mexicans beat the house.
Done. It's done. It's done. It's finished. Yeah. Yeah.
That was quick.
Yeah. That's it. No, it's a stupid joke, but me gusta más por la tema, the
Sí,
subject
sí, sí,
of
sí.
the joke. And it's okay. Listen, I love that we're known as hard workers as Latinos because to have that grit and to have that power and that tenacity, esas son las ganas. Porque mira, porque en negocios sí se necesita ganas. Claro
Sí,
que you have to be smart and you have to be sharp. It gets tough. It gets tough. It gets really tough, and especially for our community and business because there are a lot of Latino business folks. That's we made our way into the business world, but to get into like the C-suite levels and to the executive levels and all of that, it takes some extra pushing because we don't have our grandfathers and our fathers in there already opening the door and letting us in. So ahí es cuando
sí.
se cuenta, es cuando es importante tener eso de las ganas. So it's good, y siempre agradezco porque por lo que ha hecho la generación, porque lo que hizo la generación antes. Llegaron, se pusieron a trabajar, no se quejaban, o aunque se quejaban un poco, pero lo
Sí.
hicieron. Y
Era
ahora
necesario,
ya
¿no?
era
Quejarse.
necesario. Sí, 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 era necesario. Y ahora, como yo soy la segunda generación, yo siento que es mi responsabilidad de subir otro nivel, otros
Sí,
dos, tres niveles, lo que puedo, porque I'm always gonna honor what my parents did, and I love to see that they're proud of me and what I'm up to and what I'm doing. And my rush is like, oh my God, I want to make it to this level so I can take care of my parents even more, and I want to do that. And I want to, and it's almost like a sense of responsibility. And I think that's a responsibility that it's like residual of what they had. They came here with the responsibility for the kid and for the familia. And now I feel it's like, okay, the racing, they handed it to me. Now I feel like I got to take it a step further. So, um, I feel like it's important to honor what we've done. But you emigrated here, right? You
yes.
were born in Mexico, right?
I was born here. I was born here.
Wait,
So I'm
oh, you were
I'm
born
I'm a
here.
yeah, so I'm a
Okay,
first generation immigrant when you think about it. So I
okay,
was born here in the US, and
okay.
when I was less than a year old, my parents were agricultural workers out in the Bay in
Mm,
the Watsonville area.
yeah,
And season ended, they went back to Mexico, and we never came back to live in the US. I just grew up in Mexico and moved back to the US when I was 17. I wanted to ask, man, like, so are you an only child? Do you have siblings?
no, yeah. I have siblings. I have two older brothers and one younger brother.
Okay.
So yeah, and we're all here in LA. We're all around here.
Are they also like in the business or?
No, 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 no. They're not. One of them was one of my older brothers, not the oldest, but one of my older brothers was in the film industry. He jumped into acting before I did. He's 5 years older than me, so he
Mhm.
jumped into acting before I did. So I would see him, and I was like, yeah, I want to do it too. And I was a little younger at the time. So I think when he was 16, yeah, I guess I was 11. I started, kind of going into it too, and I went to auditions and like certain things
Young.
like that. I started playing, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I peeled back a few years, stepped away from it a few years. But that was one of my brothers. My other brother is my other older brother in law enforcement, and my younger brother, he's an adventure guy. He likes like rock climbing and doing all kinds of stuff, and he's just
For
an adventurous
sure.
dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's cool, man. Like I have a friend who does apnea. I think that's what it calls it. So he does free diving, and I
It's
mean,
crazy.
yeah, tell me about it. I tell him every day, like, you got to stop, brother. Like, this is not healthy. Cool. So you get the bug to be an actor, and you start young. You stop for a little bit, and then when do you go back? What age were you, and what type of roles were you trying to get? Do you want to be a movie star? You wanted to leave out of acting. What was your ambition back then?
My ambition wasn't. So it's interesting because remember, so my whole goal was to be strictly an actor. remember I told you when I was young, I would watch TV and I'd be like, oh, all the white kids were the ones living the life and everything. So I created a desire to live in the TV world because that was like fulfilling a part within me. And it wasn't like I think looking now as an adult, I'm like, well, that's not very healthy. Like wanting to be an actor because of the people at the TV and all that. But it wasn't the only reason. The other reason is that I grew up in a community out here in LA called Highland Park. And Highland Park is known for having a lot of TV shows and movies and stuff filmed in there. So when I grew up, I would watch these TV shows and these films and these movies, all these things being filmed in my neighborhood. And my dad would walk us down there and we would watch, and it was cool. I watched like La Bamba being filmed. I watched Reservoir Dogs. I watched all of that. Yeah. A lot of different shows. And so I was really inspired. And my dad was like, hey, mijo, he's like, you can do this if you want. He's like, this is a career you can pick. So that was my primary motivation. I think inspiration, not motivation, inspiration. But that combined also with like the desire of like, oh, all the fun stuff happens to the people on TV, combined it. And then finally, like in my early 20s is when I really started auditioning and then really started going toward the film industry.
And I'm curious, man. I'm gonna come clean real quick because I gotta be honest with my audience too. So I wanted to be an actor. When I was young, I participated in some things, and I was always the kid who wanted to do poetry and like compete with other kids and make people laugh. Like I crave that attention. That's a reality. Like I do stand-up comedy now, and the more I think about it, that's the reason I love stand-up, is because you really want to think, why do I put myself in this situation?
Dude, stand-up comedians, you guys are a whole different breed, man. That's intense.
And it's because of the attention, and I thought, when I was 19, I took an acting class here at community college. I didn't speak, much English, man. Like I remember I mumbled through my monologue that I was supposed to do for the final. The professor passed me, which I'm grateful for. And that stopped there. But I used to say to people like, hey, I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to, start auditioning for things and maybe I'll get it. Maybe I won't. 10 years passed or more. And this year, for the first time, last year I took some acting classes and I auditioned for some roles and I did my first play here in Sacramento with a production company. And it was pretty badass. Like first of all, I never thought acting was this difficult. So I want to ask you this, man, like you lived through this, you've had this experience, you're 6'3", you're a good looking dude. Like, so what does it take, man, like to make it as an actor?
Listen, first of all, definitely a lot of luck. Definitely connecting with people. But as far as the actual skill, I'll tell you, when I did book the roles I did book, and whenever I do book people, because now I'm on the other side of it, and I book people for jobs. What it takes is the authenticity, the realism. The thing is, thank you for the compliment of saying earlier, like, being a good looking person, I'll take it any day. But what it takes is that, if you have a good looking person on screen and they're just very flat and doing all this stuff, you don't believe it. We as humans are very emotional beings. So when we feel connected with emotion, we feel someone going through something for real. That's what really makes a difference. And it's not so much about acting. It's about feeling it. It's about feeling it, and I have, sometimes when I go periods without acting for a long time, sometimes I mess around and, we'll do things, because, I own the company. We do certain things sometimes where I do act. And one of the things I always have to remind myself is like, don't act, feel it. And that's really what it is. And I think that's just the biggest thing. I think that was personally, I feel is like the biggest advice. There's a lot of little things in here and there, and there's like techniques of like what eye to use connected to what camera, all of that stuff. All that technique is stuff people can learn. But ultimately, it's like, forget about what this looks like. If you're in a scene and you got a moco coming out your nose and tears and, all this stuff, and that's all real stuff. Like, let it happen. Let it happen. I think that's the thing that helped me the most. And I think that's also what I look for whenever I cast for projects.
That's the advice. Like when I remember when we started taking, like the first few weeks of the classes, like she would tell us an emotion and we had to perform it without words. And that's tough. I never knew there were so many emotions. Like I knew anger, happiness, suspense and emotion. I don't know, dude. Like, see, English is my second language, brother. So when she would come up with this emotion, I'm like, I would pull out my phone and look it up.
What does this mean? Hold on.
Yeah. How do I make a face to look like it? But yeah, I know it was a pretty cool experience. Like, I think I'll try doing it again. It just takes so much time. I think they call it like a long production, or it was a 15-week contract. Right? So but it was 10 weeks of performance, 8 performances a week. And it was intense too. Like, and I was, working with this seasoned actors. Like some of them were actually nominated, for some stuff here in the region. And dude, it was the coolest thing because I was the only new person on the thing. So I don't know. I had a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. It's fun. Listen, acting's fun. Acting is fun. And there's something about being within a group and a community and your fellow co-stars and things like that. Yeah. It's really fun. I'll be doing more of it again eventually, but right now I just have my responsibilities to the company and I got to focus on it. Man. But I'll get to it eventually again.
And also when I asked, what does it take to be an actor? Because I'm sure that actors who are doing pretty well for themselves. Like, and a lot of times we think about celebrities, right? But like a working actor, it's a person who continuously have work to perform and to be able to sustain themselves, right? Because like usually, like I think that's like the erroneous idea. We when we think of an actor, we want to think about Brad Pitt and or Luis Gerardo Mendes and like these people that have the celebrity status. But being an actor a lot of times is having 6 months of work to be able to sustain yourself throughout the year. So as far as that, like how do you do it? Do you know anybody that's doing it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you
absolutely.
like that life?
Absolutely. The thing is, you have to treat it like a career. There's a big pile of people I can separate that are like, you're actors, but you're not. I don't want to call them professional actors, but they're not career type actors. Okay. And the thing is, you have to treat it like it's an actual profession. You have to wake up and be like, what am I going to do for my acting today? What connections do I have? Did I send out these emails? Are my pictures up to date? Is my resume up to date? Like all of these, you actually have to treat it like a career. I feel that whatever you're trying to achieve, you have to treat it as if you're already at that level. I remember, a couple years ago, I forget the gentleman's name. And he says, and I'm sure someone maybe listening will recognize and know who it is. But some years back, I remember listening to this advice on this video on this it's a popular clip. The guy says, to become a millionaire, to become very successful, it's not about how to make the millions. You have to become the person to make the millions. It's like, it's not about the idea. It's the person that generates it. It's just, and then, once you become this type of person, it's like a tool. Think about it. It's like, think of like a shovel. Like, you want to dig a hole. You have to become the shovel to create that hole. So I think that really kind of translates into other industries. It's like, to be a professional actor, a working actor, you have to behave like one right now. You have to, and it is a lot about image. Be prepared, be sharp looking, be well spoken. Remember people's names, write down events, go to events, utilize your social media, all of it. You actually have to do all of that because that's what it takes to be, and again, you hear the stories of the person who was just discovered working at a restaurant and then they become famous. Those things happen too. All of those things are very realistic, but to give yourself the best chance is you have to treat your desired profession as if you're already that professional. And what would you do throughout that day?
That is such good advice, man. I saw something not exactly the same, but it was this guy who was talking about, and my wife and I do it too. If you're ever in Sacramento, I would love to drive you by these houses. They're called the Fat 40s, and they're in East Sacramento, and they're these incredible, Victorian, huge. They're mansions. They're huge houses, and like for Christmas, like everybody is like 5-6 blocks, and everybody gets together and they decorate them. They're like multi-million-dollar houses. You drive by them and like you think one day, but like the question, like you're saying that you're gonna be asking is like, who do I need to become to have that? Like, and we rarely think about that. We just dream about what we want. Like, it's not about what do I need to do. It's like, who do I need to become That is really real.
Yeah, it's in your words, man. It's in your words. I never speak bad about myself. I only talk about the things I'm going to do. And whenever I talk about these, I never really talk about, oh, I'm going to try to do this. I say I'm going to do it. It's like, if you have to know it yourself. You have to convince yourself. Because if you yourself are not convinced, no one around you can be convinced. Like when I tell people, I'm early on, a couple of years ago, my partner and I, my wife, Fanny, and I, we would tell people, we're going to launch a streamer and we're going to be in, millions of homes and we're going to do all that. Sure enough, we're launching in, 3-4 weeks and we're going to be in millions of homes. But back when we were saying it, when we first started, we didn't know who we were going to partner up with. We didn't know how we were going to do it. We didn't know what it looked like. We just said it's going to happen. Like right now, I have a goal house I want to buy. I have a gold car I want to buy. And these are fun things. It's nice. It's okay. If you work hard, you can have these things. Anyone can have these things. It's available to everybody. But I say, I'm going to have that. And I put a timeline on it. And I think that that's important for people to do again. And I think, and I'm going back to, as actors, I'm going to be on X show. I'm going to be a series regular. I'm going to book 2 roles next year. And you just say it and you say it. And then what that also does is that people listen to you that way. Like if you're telling me that though, saying you're like, hey, by next year, I'm going to have, 5 million active subscribers. You have 5 million active subscribers. You tell me that. So next time when I'm in my circles and I'm talking to people, I was like, you got to talk to Beto. Beto's got this podcast. Yeah, he's working his way. He'll be at 5 million subscribers by next year. So now I'm speaking it for you too. So it's about having that. It's not just so much confidence, but it's more like a declaration of what you're doing. Because now you say it, it becomes true in your head and it becomes true in action.
I'm reading this book right now. It's called The Business of Expertise. And he talks about how to turn what you're an expert on into a business, like outreach and community relations and podcasting and all these different things. Yeah. And there is 2 people who succeed in life. There are the people that position themselves well and the people that have used this confidence that even if they don't know what the hell is going on, they just, you're like, I want to work with them. Like they just perceive you, dude. And it's so true. Like it's like a magnet, when that happens. Now, Nelson, I want to hear more about your different endeavors. You and your wife, you're entrepreneurs and you have these different ventures and you're starting different businesses. You start as an actor and now you're working in production, right? So talk to me about Avenida Productions and how did it come together for you and as a couple? What was the thing that you thought was going to be the hardest and it turned out to be just the simplest thing, but you were just procrastinating on it?
Those are good questions. I'll start with that question first. Like what seemed to be the hardest and then turned out to be the simplest thing? I think the initial point of jumping in and the jumping in and just getting it done and actually starting a business. This was 7 years ago. And I'll start with that because I get a lot of people ask me like, oh, when's the right time to start the business? When is advice or how much planning should I have? And I was like, yeah, have an idea, have a plan of what you're going to do, and then jump in and just get it done. Because once you're in, it's like you jump in to go swimming and you jump in and you're like, oh, hey, I can actually swim. It's kind of far and the water's a little rough, but I can actually do it. So I think that is probably the thing that is at the very beginning of like what seems the hardest and actually ends up being easier. Now, you level up, you go into bigger waves and bigger pools as you start leveling up and you keep growing. But I think that's the most important thing I wanted to share off of that. The hardest thing that seemed the simplest is the actual trigger pulling of getting started. Now, the company itself, Avenida Productions is how we started. And then we converted into a corporation 2.5 years ago. And we became Avenida Entertainment Group. The reason we became Avenida Entertainment Group is because we were growing. And then we brought on investors. And we actually have multiple services to offer. We own 3 different divisions of the company. Number 1 is Support Our Story, which is a crowdfunding platform, which helps creatives raise money so they can create their projects and their films and everything else like that. And we've already raised millions of dollars for hundreds of projects over the years. Avenida Entertainment Group owns Support Our Story, supportourstory.com. is the website for the crowdfunding platform. And then Avenida Productions is the production company. So that's the second vertical. It's the production company, all the productions we do and the films we shoot and things like that, which we have a lot of exciting projects coming up this coming year. And then the third leg is A+. So A+ by Avenida is our streaming platform. So we're going to be streaming our content, our TV shows, but not just our stuff. We're licensing a lot of stuff, cooking shows, travel shows, movies, documentaries, everything, but just a wide variety of stuff. And we're launching that in about 3 to 4 weeks. So that'll be ready to go early 2024. Nice. And we're and we're working with different outlets and different things. So within our first year, we'll already be in millions of a few million homes across the country, and it's going to be English language. Thank you. And it's English language, so it's American Latino TV. So it's for the U.S. Latino in English, because a lot of people don't realize when you talk. A lot of people I'm talking about, like people in the higher corporate positions in the traditional studios, don't fully grasp that Latinos are American, and that have American experiences, and they feel that we're all walking around with sombreros and pistolas, and fucking dancing to la cucaracha.
A+. So how long were you planning this?
It's been over 2 years. It's been over 2 years in development, and we've had it that we were almost going to launch it close to a year ago, but we weren't fully confident in it. We're like, nope, this isn't ready for market, so we pulled it back. It's when you introduce a product, it has to be right. Now, especially if you come from a community that's underserved, like an underrepresented community like us, people expect us to come out with something that's not, of great quality. So we decided to keep working on it more and to actually release it right and properly. So it was, as much as I'd say like I'd wanted to release this a year ago, is so much better that we waited. There's stuff that I can't share yet because there are some surprises and some things. We are going to be, I say within 5 years, one of the major studios within Hollywood, and I mean across the board.
I believe you, man. I believe you because you've been working on this and you understand what's needed. And what I'm curious about, so you were saying that you were going to launch a year ago and you stopped because you thought, okay, this is not the product that I want to put out. Did you feel pressures, like outside pressures saying, no, this is good enough. This is good enough for the market that you're aiming?
It wasn't even outside pressures, because that was a decision that my wife and I decided, because you have to be, because we didn't introduce it quite yet to outside people outside of the company. I think we had not so much pressure, but I think excitement from the community about releasing it, which is some pressure, because I feel that when you put yourself into this position of representing the community, there's a responsibility that comes with it. And so it was, I think the pressure came internally from us too, of like, is it right? Is it not right? No, this isn't good. And you have to look at the long picture. It's like, okay, it might be good now, but in this amount of time, is it going to be financially, the right decision, strategically, technologically, the right decision? There are a lot of different things that come into play, and then when you're rolling out a product that's going to go on a national level, you really have to think about what the experience is like, not just for you or me as a person here living here in Los Angeles, but like, what is it like for people in Texas? What's it like for people in Florida? What's it like for people, Latinos in Maine, or everything else like that? So, and it's the actual experience of it. So the pressure, I'd say, came more internally than anything else.
Okay. The reason I asked that question is because the more and more I meet with creators and owners of companies, it feels like a lot of times folks would want to make them believe that because their market is Latinos and Latinas, the product doesn't have to be as good, or the price shouldn't be as expensive, or the quality, it's going to be this much. And that's such a misconception, man, because we were talking earlier about, the numbers, right? Like, we are able to afford these good quality things. We already do. I mean, I'm paying for like 5 streaming services right now, and a lot of those don't necessarily serve the purpose that I want. Like they don't tell me, or they don't show me what I want to see. So I'm excited about A plus. And
good. And guess what? You don't have to pay anything for it. It's going to be free. It's going to be ad supported.
Really?
Yeah. We're not. So we decided at first, when we were first initially launching a couple years back, we were like, okay, we'll make it a very low fee. And then we're like, you know what? We want to bring this to our community for free, and we'll work deals with advertisers. And listen, advertisers want to reach our community. Our community likes to buy. We like to buy stuff. We, Latinos, we love to spend money. So it just worked out better that way. And that was one of the major shifts we decided to do. It's like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to go. It's called AVOD, which is ad video on demand, or fast, free ad supported television. So that's what we're going to do. We want people to be able to just to click it and be like, I'm watching stuff, and not have to worry about it. Plus, you can use the commercial breaks to run to the restroom or grab another drink.
Absolutely, man. No, and it also allows you to scale like down the road too. Maybe down the road you have 10 million, or when you have 10 million followers, it's like people are asking, hey, you know what? I don't want to see the commercials no more. To think about a paid membership, is that in the conversations?
Oh yeah, those are always part of the conversation. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's always part of the conversation. I'll tell you what, we have, besides that, we have maybe like 3 other big projects that we already have in our mind but even around like what you're saying, yeah, like that's already an option. When we introduce it, if we introduce it, is something just based off, we're going to look at the analytics, and we're going to send out, we'll send out surveys and ask people like, hey, would you, and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of research that'll go into that, but that does seem like an option. But one thing is, we will always remain and accessible, and it's part of like also with our production company and our crowdfunding platform. No matter how big we grow, we will always have an element of accessibility, like to independent filmmakers that are starting in the earlier stage of their career, who don't quite have the budgets. We're going to have different scales when it comes to raising funds for projects that need just a little bit of funds. We're going to work with them on those scales. So no matter how big we get or how much we start charging in other areas, one thing that Fanny and I are going to stay true to is always being accessible for the community that doesn't have a lot of extra income, because that's our responsibility to help elevate and lift our community.
That's awesome and beautiful. Like, I respect that a lot, because it is true, right? So like I just mentioned earlier, that the fact that I do have, I might have not 5 streaming services. I do have 3, but that's already too much. Like there's folks that don't necessarily, are able to do this, right? So
yeah,
that's awesome. I'll just throw it out there. If you ever need a show with a killer host, and a nice background to be part of that, dude, like, hey, Que Te Tomas is open to conversations. Now, what are you excited about? Like I know you mentioned in 4 weeks this is launching. Where are we just gonna be able to like go on the website and like start watching? You create an account.
You'll be able to go on the website. You'll be able to go on your phone. You'll be able to go on your smart
apps.
TV. You'll be able to go on your apps. You'll be able to go anywhere and get it.
Wow.
Give me anywhere any of the major streamers are available. You'll be able to watch A plus. Yeah. It's a lot. It was a big investment. It was a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of late nights, a lot of headaches. I mean, I would do research. I mean, I've seen the sun come up so many times just because I'm like learning and reading and watching videos of how to do this properly. So yeah.
that's so. And last question on this, because I know that I'm just excited about it when it comes out. So when you're building something like this, because I really just don't even begin to understand. Like, you obviously conceived the idea, and you're talking about with people that that are working in something similar, but you have to have a tech team, right? And then you have to develop an algorithm to see what each of your users is going to be using, and so you need to have a service with a cloud service that is going to keep all the data in one place to be able to stream. So like, how, dude? Like, what was the first thing and what was the last thing that you're doing? Just those 2.
So the first thing is to do the research on it. It's like, okay, here, how expensive is this? What is needed? Who are the people and the developers that can help me create this? That's the first phase of it. And then there's a lot of the technical stuff. That's the beginning phases of it. Just like if you're going to buy anything, you buy a new TV, buy a new car, you start looking at it. Okay, how far am I from starting it? And I'll tell you, the last phase of it, of like where we're at right now, stuff I could share is like, what is the experience I want people to have? Right now I'm looking at it as like, okay, what experience? If someone opens A plus and they're on the other side of the country and they don't know about Nelson, they don't know about Avenida, they don't know anything about me, what is their experience going to be of it? How are they going to perceive it? So right now I'm focused on the actual experience of the actual app itself, because at the end of the day, I do have to serve my customers. Regardless if it's my community and they're going to be happy to see Latinos on screen and all of that, I'm not going to just take that and be like, here, have some Latino content, eat it, and be happy I'm giving it to you, and and I get paid for the ads. No. Right. It takes. I have a love for my community. I want them to enjoy the content. I want them to want us to make more movies and more shows, and I want to be able to give more filmmakers the opportunity to actually.
That is huge too, because that's a big issue, right? So like where filmmakers are not able to post or show their material anywhere because there's a lot of obstacles. So you're going to be able to help in that. So we're going to see a lot of originals too, in a way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the goal is we're also going to be, putting in money and green lighting filmmakers that are starting off, that we see them, we're going to.
That is exciting, man.
Yeah, man. So it's my, not just I would say our, my wife and I and our company and our team, all of us collectively, everyone that is part of Avenida is enrolled in the mission of really elevating our community. The business side of me gets satisfied because there's a lot of money to be made. There's money to be made. I'll make a big check. I don't need to make the whole check. I can split that with people, that's where it's at.
I want to ask you about what is the process to start raising funds for a project? And that's a big question that I've had for a long time, because we're not talking about a few $1,000s here. We're talking about millions of dollars, right? That are going to be invested. So
yeah.
How does that work?
So listen, unfortunately for our community, it happens very rarely. Very rarely, okay? When that does work, it has to be approached like a business. Two things, two ways it happens, where you approach it like a business. Like, listen, I have this actor, I have this story, I have this distribution it's going to go to already. We have all these things in line. And it's comparable to this movie, which made X amount of money. I need this much money to be on board. That's the traditional way. Okay. Another way is you find someone who is just supportive of you as a Latino who wants to put Latino actors on the screen. It's like, hey, listen, I want to do this. And there are a lot of folks out there who have a lot of money who aren't necessarily too concerned with the return of the money. But they're like, here, I'll give you, a million, a couple $1 million. But I'm the executive producer, and I get to do my share and my piece and help with creating this movie that highlights Latinos. And to them, it's okay. They have that type of money where they can do this, and it's worth it for them for that amount of money, and which is magnificent. I can't wait to be at that level where you can just give a few million away to up and coming, Latino creatives who are doing their projects. So those are a couple different ways to approach it. Now, the way a lot of our community approaches it is actually through crowdfunding with much smaller budgets. We're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The crowdfunding platform we have helps a lot of people get that way. The thing is, when you create that, sometimes you can create a short film, or you can get some of the funds, and then an investor comes in with the remaining funds. And it's a step, it's a platform. So what we do is we provide a few steps at every step of the way, at the funding. Then it comes to production. We'll help you with the production if you need help with it. Like, hey, is this a smaller budget? We're not going to charge you what we charge a bigger project, obviously. We still want to help you. So those are the three different ways, treating it like a business and showing people what they get in return, mm-hmm. Finding someone who's gonna, support it because of the actual cause. And the third way is just doing it yourself and then raising some funds and putting out a proof of concept, a short film, a documentary, or whatever it is, and raising the money through crowdfunding. And that's how we've done it. We've raised millions of dollars that way.
I also wanted to ask, how do you do it? How do you do it for your company? Like if you can share
Yeah.
a little bit of how that works, you know, because again, I consider myself to be a person, you know, before I let you answer that I mean, I do network and I do get to know people, but I've never encountered anybody that's told me, hey man, I have a few $100,000 around that I would love to invest. Like, do you have any ideas? So I know that you have to look for those opportunities, and I know that's something that you do. So like, how does that look for you, man?
Yeah. So as a Latino, you're at a disadvantage. Latinos get of all venture capital money that gets deployed every year in the United States, Latinos get just over 1% of that money. Think about it. We're 20% of the population, and of all venture capital money, we get only 1%, a little bit over 1%. What do you have to do? And I share this. I actually have a few TikToks and social media where I actually share this because there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money out there, Beto. There's so much money out there. The thing is, now we have to go out and get it. What you have to do is, number one, know your product, know the market, have actual research on why this is going to sell. Why will this sell? And have research to back it. Well, something close to this has sold before, something like this, and this is how much money it's made. You know, so you actually have to have your research. The other thing you have to do is really just be the person. You have to be the person, because when people give you money, listen, I could, let's say you're selling me that microphone right there. That microphone sounds great. I love the way it sounds, but can you be in charge of the company? I'll give $1 million because I like that product. But will you, the person, you bet, turn my $1 million into 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 million? It's a lot about you as the person, as the trust, because the money doesn't go to the product. The money goes to the person creating the product or pushing the service or whatever it is.
Right.
So you have to be the person. You have to be the person that is investable. That means the way you behave, the way you respond, the way you research, the way you do everything. More often than not, it's the person that creates the company. Think about it, because there are people who create multiple companies, and it's not just the guy got lucky with a bunch, or the guy or the girl got lucky with all the different products. The person in charge of those made those products happen.
Right.
So yeah. So a lot of it is more than just knowing the actual product itself and the service or whatever it is. It's about being the actual person that is going to be the one that actually has given this person the confidence in them to invest in you.
That is awesome, and it's exciting to hear from someone who's been doing it. Like I'm sure that a lot of the people listening today han pensado alguna vez como, o han tenido ideas, y a veces las ideas no pasan, no tanto porque no quieras, sino por falta de resources, you know. So thank you for joining, you know, the podcast and the show today, man, to talk to us about your experience. Love to hear about your story, and I'm just excited to share this with people.
You got it, Beto. Un placer.
Ánimo, hermano. Raza, cuídense y nos escuchamos el siguiente episodio. Raza, muchas gracias por escuchar el episodio de esta semana. Ahí te encargo que nos dejes un review en Apple Podcasts y en Spotify. Síguenos en tu plataforma de podcast favorita o en YouTube para que te avisen cuando salga el siguiente episodio. Nos puedes contactar en @betorrizo_ o en @que-te-tomas- en Instagram y en Twitter. También nos puedes seguir en YouTube como @betorrizo o como que te tomas podcast. Music this week was by La Noche Oscura, LESFM, and from the Silverman Sound. This episode was produced and edited by me, Beto Rizzo. Photo and lighting was provided by Jean Reynoso, who you can follow on Instagram as @GeanR_photo. Yo soy Beto Rizzo, and you're listening to ¿Qué te tomas? Bye.